wise man once said, "Most men walk through life as if they are alone. Not just alone in the world, alone in their bones. They seek guidance but walk without direction. They pray for strength but feel hollow. They talk of faith but live in fear. And it's not because they are weak. It's because they've forgotten. Forgotten what was breathed into them. Forgotten that the greatest power they will ever know isn't in the sky or on a mountaintop or waiting for them in some distant future. It's within, right here, right now. Not when you feel holy. Not when the world agrees with you. Not when your past is perfect. But now, in your doubt, in your fatigue, in your silence. There is something ancient in you. Something divine that didn't just visit for a moment, it inhabits you. It does not shout. It does not beg. It knows. And if you ever truly understood what lives in you, you would stop crawling like you are lost. You would rise, not because someone told you to, but because your very breath would demand it. You were never meant to live as if the answers were somewhere else. You were not made to plead for direction or scrape for worth. There is a current inside you, a fire, a force, a law. It built mountains, parted oceans, shaped civilizations, and it's still waiting to be recognized by you. You don't need to summon this power. You need to remember it. Because the world will try to make you forget. It will distract you with noise. It will train you to seek permission, to chase signs, to delay your destiny until you feel ready. But God never placed his power in you as an idea. He placed it as a presence. And that presence doesn't need your perfection. It waits for your remembrance. So now the question is not, where is God? The real question is, are you willing to walk as if he's already here? Because once you remember, truly remember, you will not walk the same again. You will not speak the same again. You will not live the same again. Because now you don't walk like a man searching. You walk like a man found. And the world will feel it. Not because you shout, but because your stillness speaks. You carry the divine. And from this moment on, you act accordingly. You must learn to remember. Not with emotion, not with theatrics, not through waiting for the stars to align, but with a decision. Because memory, the kind that awakens power, is not about recollection. It's about alignment. To remember is to recalibrate. To stop behaving like someone who is lost and begin living like someone who has already been claimed. This isn't ego. This isn't delusion. This is truth, and truth, when remembered, transforms everything it touches. You walk differently. You speak with less haste and more weight. You look at fear, and instead of flinching, you listen not to the voice of panic, but to the whisper that says, I am still here. I never left. To act as if God is within you is not to pretend. It is not about puffing your chest or rehearsing affirmations. It is about surrendering to what is already true. It is not bravado. It is not religious theater. It is clarity. It means that when doubt knocks, you do not entertain it like a guest, you answer it with posture. It means that when the world asks you to prove your worth, you don't argue, you embody. To remember that the divine lives in you is to remember you were never meant to shrink. You were never meant to delay action until someone else gave you approval. Because readiness is not a mood. It is not a reward. It is a decision. You don't ask anymore. Am I ready? You decide that you are. You don't say, I hope I'll be guided. You walk like someone who knows he's guided. You don't wait for protection. You move like protection in motion. You don't delay the instruction. You become the instruction. This is what alignment looks like. It doesn't come after comfort. It comes after obedience. And obedience doesn't wait for more confirmation. It moves with conviction the moment truth arrives. So ask yourself, have your actions caught up to your identity? Does the way you speak reflect the weight of what you carry? Do your habits witness to your inner alignment? If the answer is no, then today is not the day you wait for a better moment. Today is the day you remember and act accordingly. Because you are not a man who was left empty. You are a man who has forgotten what fullness feels like. But now that memory is returning, and once it does, there is no turning back. There is a difference between pretending to be powerful and walking in power. One is performance. The other is presence. To act as if God is within you is to embody a different posture, one that doesn't beg for access, doesn't mimic the confidence of others, doesn't apologize for being. It doesn't mean you shout louder, it means you move quieter, but with more weight. Your silence becomes more commanding than their noise, your stillness more disruptive than their frenzy. Because true spiritual authority is not flamboyant, it's felt. It reshapes the atmosphere when you enter a room, not because you seek attention, but because your alignment cannot be ignored. You sit differently, not from pride, but from peace. You speak less like a beggar and more like a partner, not out of arrogance, but out of assurance. You stop asking the mirror, "Am I enough?" because the question has already been answered. And the answer lives in your being, not in anyone's opinion. You no longer require others to understand your urgency because purpose doesn't wait for validation. You no longer seek external support to step into your rhythm because divine rhythm was never meant to be outsourced. When you carry something sacred, you begin to act like it. You start protecting your time like it's holy. You guard your energy like it has weight. You choose your company like your destiny depends on it, because it does. You no longer eat what weakens you. You no longer indulge in words that drain you. You no longer entertain environments that mock your vision. You become selective not out of superiority, but out of stewardship. To walk as if God is within you is to treat the inner flame as sacred. You don't throw it into every conversation. You don't cast it before those who only seek to dim it. You protect the gate, because the gate is holy. You no longer live as a man who needs to explain every move. You live as a man who walks in knowing, and that knowing, it doesn't scream, it doesn't chase, it doesn't seek approval, it radiates. You carry the kind of weight that shifts the dynamic of every room, not through force, but through alignment. And those around you may not know exactly what it is, but they feel it. They feel that you are not operating from ego. You are moving from somewhere deeper, from somewhere real. That is what it means to act as if God is within you, not to claim power, but to carry it with reverence. There is a sacred shift that happens when belief becomes embodiment. You stop talking like you carry something divine, and you start living like it. Because to believe is not enough. Even the timid believe, even the hesitant believe, but it is the aligned who become. To carry the divine within you means you stop negotiating with your old self. You stop delaying action when the signal has already been sent. You stop saying, "I'm not ready," because now you know readiness is not a condition, it is a decision. You no longer walk with hesitation in your steps. You no longer speak with doubt hidden in your tone. You no longer lower your voice so others feel taller. You walk like a man who has been entrusted, because you have. You speak like a man who already knows, because you do. The answers you've been begging for, you've carried them all along, but you only unlock them when your actions match your assignment. That means your daily choices begin to align with your inner clarity. Not just the big moments, but the small ones. How you sit, how you speak to yourself, how quickly you act on that inner pull. You stop living like someone waiting for approval. You begin living like someone who was already sent. There is no more shrinking, no more hiding, no more explaining your fire to those who prefer you dim. You stop apologizing for your calling. You stop waiting for the conditions to be perfect. Because now you realize you are not the one being tested. You are the one being trusted. And trust requires motion. It doesn't wait for others to cheer. It doesn't delay until the plan is clear. It moves. This is how obedience works. It's not a discussion. It's a declaration: I will act as if I'm already who I was created to be. Because belief without behavior is betrayal. It's a rejection of your own divine design. You say you carry the light. Then why are you still walking like you're in the dark? You say God is within you. Then why are you still whispering your worth? You say you've been called. Then why are you waiting for a second confirmation? The man who truly remembers what he carries stops performing and starts becoming. And becoming is louder than any sermon, deeper than any speech, more powerful than any performance. It's felt, it's seen, it's lived. So today, step beyond belief and start behaving like the vessel you were born to be. When you truly know God lives within you, you stop trying to prove it. Because divine presence doesn't need performance. It needs protection. You don't protect it by building walls. You protect it by curating your environment, by treating your time, your energy, your mind like sacred ground. You stop wasting your mornings in distraction. You stop filling your calendar with obligations that drain you. You stop giving your focus to people who mock your mission. Because when you carry something holy, your life must begin to look like a temple. You guard your inputs, not because you are fragile, but because what's flowing through you is too powerful to be polluted. You are no longer careless with your peace. You don't just let anyone speak into your spirit. You don't just let any voice echo in your thinking. You choose stillness over stimulation. You choose clarity over chaos. You don't keep walking into rooms that ask you to shrink. You don't keep dining at tables that poison your perspective. You know now, not everything that invites you is meant for you. You start saying no, not with guilt, but with reverence, because every yes you speak is a seed into your future. And your future is not casual, it's consecrated. When you carry divine intelligence, you walk with intentionality. You plan your steps like someone who is aware, I am not walking alone. You start becoming aware of how things make you feel, not emotionally, but energetically. Does this conversation build or burden? Does this habit strengthen or steal? Does this relationship pour into purpose or pull you from it? This is not paranoia. This is protection. Because when you recognize what you carry, you begin to build a life that respects it. No more staying where you're tolerated. No more enduring atmospheres that confuse your clarity. No more entertaining people who drain your flame and call it humility. You stop performing. You stop explaining. You stop begging to be seen. Because the man who carries the divine doesn't need recognition. He needs room. Room to breathe. Room to hear. Room to move. And if that room doesn't exist, he doesn't fight to be included. He creates it, because the presence within him deserves nothing less. So I ask you, are you still asking the world to make space for your calling? Or have you finally decided to make space for the divine to work through you? This is your turning point. From proving to protecting. From performing to preserving. Because once you truly understand what's inside you, you'll never treat your life the same again. There is a quiet power that follows those who walk in alignment. Not loud, not flashy, but undeniable. To carry the divine within is to embody a certain stillness, one that does not flinch when challenged, does not rush to explain, does not compete for visibility. You walk into rooms and people feel something. They can't define it. They may not understand it, but they respect it. Because what you carry cannot be ignored. You don't need to defend yourself constantly. You don't need to argue for your worth. You don't need to chase approval in crowds that will never understand your assignment. Why? Because true authority doesn't come from being seen. It comes from being sent. When you act as if God is within you, you no longer need to justify your every move. You no longer dilute your voice to appease weak ears. You no longer offer your vision to those who only wish to mock it. You've moved beyond explanation. Now you operate in demonstration. You don't announce your calling, you walk in it. You don't debate your value, you live in it. This is the kind of power that shakes atmospheres without raising its volume. The kind that causes others to pause mid-sentence just because of your presence. You are not loud, but you are unmistakable, because your life is no longer reactive. It's responsive to divine instruction, not public opinion. You do not wrestle with noise because noise is no match for presence. And presence, true spiritual presence, is not a result of charisma. It is the consequence of alignment. When you align with what's inside you, you begin to release what's not. The fear, the doubt, the need to prove. And in that release, you rise. Not because you shouted louder, but because you walked steadier. You start speaking differently, not to impress, but to impact. You say less, but what you say carries more, because your words aren't driven by insecurity. They're delivered from identity. You begin to listen more than you talk, because you understand divine wisdom doesn't rush. It rests, it waits, it releases when the time is right. You begin to carry yourself like a vessel, not of potential, but of presence. And the world notices. Even if it can't name it, it will respond. So today, shed the need to perform. Let go of the desire to be loud. And remember this: the most powerful man in the room is not the one who commands the most attention, but the one whose stillness speaks louder than everyone else's noise. You don't need to dominate the space. You are the space. And when you walk like that, the world moves to make room. There is a deception that paralyzes gifted people, a whisper that says, "Wait until you're ready." But here's the unfiltered truth: you will never feel ready to carry what you were born to carry. Because divine assignments do not consult your comfort. They arrive in obedience, not in ease. They knock when your hands are still shaking. They call your name when your voice is uncertain. They choose you when your confidence is low, but your spirit is listening. And so most people miss their moment not because they weren't chosen, but because they hesitated. They believed the lie that readiness is a feeling. It's not. It's a decision, a spiritual contract. To walk as if God is within you means you move before the fear disappears. You speak before your voice stops trembling. You build while your knees still wobble. You move because you've heard, not because you feel perfect. And the ones who wait until the noise quiets, they never move, because the noise never stops. The doubt never fully fades. The world never becomes convenient. But the window does close. Every divine calling arrives with a gate, a moment of spiritual timing. And that gate is not held open forever. It's not punishment. It's momentum. Momentum waits for no one. It flows toward availability, not potential. And if you delay that momentum, moves to the one who didn't. So what are you waiting for? More signs, more proof, more confirmation. Let's be honest, you've already heard it, felt it, known it. But knowing without moving is torment. You'll feel it in your chest, in your restlessness, in your dreams that don't fade no matter how much you try to distract yourself. You are not unclear, you are uncommitted, and clarity without commitment is a curse. Because now you know and still you hesitate. So I say this to you plainly: you must act. Now. Not because you understand every step, not because you feel fearless, but because the signal was already given, and it won't be sent twice. Once you act, resources align. Clarity sharpens. Confidence grows in motion, not before it. Obedience breeds momentum, and momentum crushes fear. This is how men rise, not by waiting to become worthy, but by deciding to become willing. So if your hands are still shaking, move anyway. If your voice still trembles, speak anyway. Because the man who obeys while afraid will one day walk in such power that fear won't even recognize him. You don't need to feel ready, you need to decide. The most dangerous place for a gifted soul is between clarity and commitment. It's that space where you know what to do, but you wait. You've received the instruction. You've felt the pull. You've heard the whisper again and again. And still you hesitate. You call it wisdom. You call it preparation. You call it being careful. But let's tell the truth. It's disobedience dressed in logic. You don't lack clarity. You lack follow-through. And every day you delay action, You betray the alignment that's already been given to you. You pray, God, show me what to do. But He already has. You're just hoping the assignment changes. Why? Because clarity demands change. Clarity demands courage. Clarity demands the death of excuses. And that is the war not between right and wrong, but between obedience and avoidance. You don't need another confirmation. You don't need 10 more signs. You don't need to see step 5 before completing step 1. You need to commit to what you already know. Because clarity without commitment creates torment. That gnawing ache, that spiritual restlessness, that unease you can't shake. It's not punishment. It's purpose unfulfilled. And the longer you wait, the heavier it gets. Not because you're cursed, but because you are called. And ignoring the call does not silence it. It just builds resistance in your soul. So what do? You act, even when you're unsure, even when the plan isn't mapped out, even when you don't feel qualified. You move, because movement breaks the resistance. You don't wait for fear to vanish. You override it. You silence it with obedience. That idea you've been holding, start it. That conversation you've been avoiding, have it. That dream you keep pushing to someday, name the date. Take the step. Because the divine doesn't reward intentions. It partners with execution. You will never create momentum from stillness. You must move first, and the provision will meet you on the path. The clarity will sharpen in action. The confidence will rise in motion. And the fear, it won't vanish. It will just fall behind, because it can't keep up with your pace anymore. You've heard enough. You've received enough. You've been called. Now move. Not because it's easy, not because you feel brave, but because God already gave the green light and you are still parked. Unbuckle. Step out. Start walking. Because clarity isn't what you wait for. It's what you walk into. There is a moment sacred and silent when everything aligns the second you act. Not when you plan perfectly. Not when you've gathered enough validation. But the very moment your feet move in obedience, heaven responds. The shift is subtle, but undeniable. Resources begin to show up. Doors begin to creak open. People begin to take notice, not because you announced yourself, but because something unseen is now in motion. This is the divine pattern faith proven not in stillness, but in movement. Confidence isn't what you wait to feel. It's what builds when you act without it. You stop overthinking. You stop rehearsing worst-case scenarios. You stop asking, what if it fails? Because now you understand failure isn't the enemy. Inaction is. The man who waits until he's certain never moves. The one who walks despite uncertainty, he becomes unstoppable. Not because he has no fear, but because fear is no longer the engine. It's just noise in the background while obedience drives the wheel. And here's the truth, the fear doesn't disappear. It simply can't keep up. The more you move, the weaker fear becomes. Because fear feeds on stagnation. It thrives in delay. But motion starves it. This is why alignment is not found in thought alone, it's found in your footsteps. Every step you take in faith invites heaven's rhythm into your momentum. You stop striving. You start flowing. You begin to speak words that weren't rehearsed. You begin to see opportunities that weren't there before. You begin to carry yourself like someone who already knows I'm not building this alone. Now your actions no longer come from pressure, but from presence. You don't move out of desperation. You move from conviction. You stop checking how others feel about your decisions. You stop collecting opinions before moving forward. You don't need everyone to understand your pace. Because your pace is no longer set by fear. It's set by assignment. And that changes everything. You begin to notice the more obedient you become, the less you need motivation. You wake up clear. You speak with weight. You walk without apology. Not because your life is easier, but because your spirit is steadier. This is the reward of obedience, not fame, not comfort, but unshakable peace. So move, even if your hands tremble, even if your voice shakes, even if your past tries to argue with your future. Move, because the signal was given, and the signal won't be sent again. Walk like you've already been approved, because the divine doesn't need to explain itself twice. There is a kind of silence that echoes louder than the crowd, a kind of presence that shifts the room without making a sound. That kind of presence is not built through charisma, through shouting, or through spectacle. It's built in alignment. Because when a man walks as if God is within him, he doesn't raise his voice to be heard. He doesn't strive to be recognized. He doesn't sell his worth in the marketplace of applause. He becomes undeniable by the way he walks, the way he waits, the way he listens. His stillness speaks sermons. His decisions carry doctrine. His posture is a proclamation. He no longer needs to tell the world who he is, because the world feels it. They feel the gravity in his presence. They feel the steadiness in his silence. They feel the weight in his eyes, not of stress, but of certainty. He's not searching anymore. He's anchored. Not because he knows everything, but because he remembers the one thing that changes everything. God lives within him. And that knowledge doesn't puff him up. It grounds him. He doesn't perform. He doesn't prove. He doesn't pretend. He simply is. This is the paradox. The more aligned you become, the less you need to declare it. You walk into meetings without needing to dominate. You enter conversations without needing to convince. You sit at tables without needing to prove your value. Because when God is truly within you, don't lead from ego, you lead from essence. And essence cannot be faked. It cannot be copied. It cannot be ignored. People may misunderstand it. They may mislabel it. They may feel uncomfortable in its presence because it reminds them of what they've forgotten within themselves. And that's okay. Let them feel it. Let them shrink. Let them project. You are not here to explain yourself. You are here to embody what you carry. So stop chasing applause. Stop responding to noise. Stop trying to be loud enough to be respected. Instead, be so aligned, so tuned into what's flowing through you that your silence carries more authority than their volume ever could. Because the man who moves from divine alignment is not the loudest in the room. He is the most unshakable. And in a world addicted to noise, stillness is your most powerful sermon. So take your place, not at the center of attention, but at the center of truth. Because the moment you stop convincing, the world starts responding. There will be mornings when you wake up and forget. Not because you are weak, but because you are human. You forget who walks with you. You forget what lives inside you. You forget the fire that once burned through your chest with clarity and direction. And in that forgetting, you shrink. Not visibly at first, but internally. You second guess. You hesitate. You scroll your mind instead of commanding it. You begin to search outside for what was always within. One comment from a small person becomes a storm in your spirit. One delay in progress becomes evidence you were never called. One moment of doubt becomes your new narrative. And just like that, you've stepped out of alignment. Not because your purpose disappeared, but because you let distraction replace devotion. You start asking weak questions. Am I ready? What if I fail? What if they don't understand me? Who do I think I am? And the truth is, in that moment, you've already lost ground. Not to your enemy, but to your amnesia. You've forgotten your flame. You've forgotten that silence is not absence. You've forgotten that hesitation is not humility, it's disconnection. But here's the good news. You don't need to wait to remember. You don't need to attend a retreat. You don't need someone else to remind you. You remember by how you respond. When fear knocks you, stand tall. When clarity fades, you move anyway. When comfort whispers, you confront it. You remember not with words, but with behavior. Because belief without embodiment is just performance. And performance is exhausting, but embodiment, that's liberating. So if you've been shrinking, if you've been hiding, If you've been apologizing for the fire in your chest today, is not the day you pray for rescue. Today is the day you return. Return to your seat of power. Return to your posture of clarity. Return to the truth that has never left you. You carry something divine. You are not walking alone, and the world has been waiting for you to remember. So stand taller, speak slower, act faster, say no without guilt. Start the thing you've been delaying. Move like the wind walks with you because it does. And when you remember, the shrinking stops, and the real you steps forward, not with apology, but with authority. There is a difference between the man who walks empty and the one who walks inhabited. The empty man flinches. He hesitates. He watches others before choosing who to be. He responds to pressure instead of applying it. He mimics drifts, performs. He searches for identity in applause. He scans the room for acceptance before speaking. And worst of all, he follows paths never meant for him. But the man who knows God walks within him. He moves differently. He doesn't just walk into a room. He shifts the atmosphere. Not with arrogance, but with authority. He doesn't announce himself. He is his announcement. Not because he's loud, but because he's undeniable. He wears power, like skin, natural, necessary, effortless. He doesn't try to prove anything. He embodies everything. You see, arrogance says, "Look at me." Authority says, "I know where I'm going." Arrogance inflates. Authority is anchored, silent, certain, dangerous in its stillness. This man doesn't chase noise. He seeks silence. Because silence is no longer empty, it's where his instruction lives. He slows his pace. Not from laziness, but from clarity. He doesn't rush because he's not trying to arrive. He already belongs. He speaks with intention. Fewer words, more weight, no fluff, no insecurity hiding behind a fast tongue. He looks you in the eye, not to intimidate, but to reveal, "I am not walking alone." He doesn't shrink to be accepted. He doesn't ask, "Is this okay?" He lives like he's already been commissioned, because he has. And this is what changes atmospheres, not performance, but presence. When you walk as if God is within you, your energy becomes an environment. You attract what's aligned. You repel what isn't. You carry peace that chaos cannot interrupt. Because you no longer draw from the world. You draw from the source. The same source that shaped galaxies. The same intelligence that breathed purpose into you. The same presence that now walks in step with your every move. So the next time you walk into that meeting, that stage, that moment that used to shake you, remember. Remember who walks with you. And walk like it. Walk like the outcome has already been written. Walk like the pressure is just another confirmation. Walk like the man who no longer waits for permission because he was sent. You don't have to change your tone. Just change your posture. Because the more your body reflects what your spirit knows, the more unstoppable you become. When you say that God is within you, you must also ask, "Have I made room for him to move?" Because divine presence cannot dwell in a house packed with noise. He does not force his voice through chaos. He whispers, and that whisper requires space. You can't say you're aligned while your calendar is drowning in distraction. You can't claim to be guided while filling your mind with every voice but his. You can't host the sacred while entertaining the superficial. God doesn't yell. He waits. Waits for the room to be cleared. Waits for the soul to be quiet. Waits for your real yes, not spoken with words, but proven in behavior. So what does making space look like? It looks like silencing the inner noise before reaching for the world's. It looks like 10 minutes of stillness before you scroll. It looks like saying no to conversations that pollute your peace. It looks like fasting from distraction, not just food, but toxic input, pointless obligations, and emotional clutter. You begin to guard your ears like gates. You begin to treat your energy like currency. You stop wasting your attention on things that weaken your witness. Because when you carry something holy, you stop living like your life is common. You don't need to add more. You need to remove what's blocking the signal. You are not fragile. You are fortified. But even the strongest temple needs cleansing. So ask yourself, what am I holding on to that crowds my spirit? What guilt, shame, or expired relationship still has a seat in my sacred space? What noise have I normalized that drowns out divine instruction? Because this is the secret. Clarity doesn't come from more effort. It comes from removal. The clearer the room, the louder the whisper. And the louder the whisper, the more unshakable your steps become. You don't need more inspiration. You need more space. Make room. Not just in your schedule, but in your soul. Declutter your mind. Detach from what drains. Detox your spirit. Because when you do, you'll begin to think clearer. Speak more intentionally. Move with peace, even in pressure. You'll stop reacting. You'll start receiving. And the divine who has been waiting all along will fill the space you create. This is the invitation. To make room not just for moments of God, but for a life with Him. Because when your life is clean of what clouds the sacred, doesn't need to search. It settles. And that settling is where your real power begins. There comes a moment when the questions must end. The searching, the stalling, the endless cycle of God, when will you show up? And the answer, fierce and quiet, is this: He already did. He showed up when He placed Himself within you. He showed up when you took your first breath. He showed up when the idea sparked, when the urge stirred, when the whisper wouldn't leave you alone. But now it's not His move. It's yours. You were never meant to keep asking for direction. You were meant to become the direction. You were never meant to wait for someone to lead you. You were meant to lead by how you live. You were never meant to chase the answer. You were meant to embody it. But the tragedy is this: most will never rise. Not because they weren't called, but because they never believed they were. They waited. Waited for permission. Waited for signs. Waited to feel ready. But what if the thing you've been praying for is actually waiting on you? What if the opportunity you want is waiting for your obedience? What if you're not supposed to knock on the door because you are the door? This is not about being discovered. It's about deciding. You decide to carry your calling even while your hands still shake. You decide to walk into the unknown with the confidence of one who knows, I'm not walking alone. You decide to trust the inner knowing more than external noise. You decide to speak even if your voice has never sounded like this before. Because the fear, it doesn't disqualify you. The shaking, it's not a sign you're off course. It's a sign you're right where you need to be, close to something holy, close to something real. So I ask you, are you still waiting for someone else to carry what was assigned to you? Are you still hoping another person will step up so you can step back? Are you still acting like you're not equipped when everything you need is already moving inside you? If so, understand this. You don't need more time. You don't need another word. You don't need to be seen. You need to decide. Because the divine does not move through hesitation. It moves through availability. And when you show up fully, humbly, obediently, you stop asking, when will God show up? Because now you understand He already did, when you did. So walk forward, not because it's easy, not because the road is smooth, but because you've been entrusted. And those who've been entrusted do not delay, they become. So now the echo of everything you've heard becomes a single question. How will you walk from here? Will you keep shrinking, waiting for your voice to stop trembling, waiting for applause that may never come, waiting for the world to understand a calling that was never meant to be understood? Or will you rise not into noise but into alignment? Will you walk like the man who knows the truth, that God is not waiting in the clouds? He's waiting in your decision. That divine power is not something you chase. It's something you unleash, that you were never meant to ask, am I ready, but to declare I was born for this. There's a way a man walks when he's full of doubt. He apologizes with every step. He waits for permission to breathe. He listens to the loudest voice in the room and forgets his own. But there's another kind of walk, the one that changes rooms, shifts atmospheres, awakens others just by being. It is the walk of the man who has remembered what he carries, remembered who sent him, remembered that stillness is power, that quiet is sacred, that he is not walking to something, he is walking with someone. From this moment on, walk like your footsteps carry answers. Walk like your silence holds sermons. Walk like your yes is not echoing from fear, but rooted in fire. Walk like the man whose identity no longer wavers with circumstances. Walk like the woman who no longer explains her strength to the small-minded. Walk like a soul who has seen God and remembers. Because when you walk like that, you don't just change your life. You become a signal that awakens others to remember their own. So don't wait another day. Walk. Walk until the questions stop. Until the room shifts. Until your very presence becomes the loudest proof that God is within you. And when they ask, what changed, you won't need to explain, because they'll feel it in your tone, in your timing, in your posture, in your peace. This is your moment, not to search, not to shout, but to stand. And when you do, the world will never look at you the same again. If something inside you just woke up, don't let it go back to sleep. Share this message. Comment, I walk with God. Subscribe for more. But most of all, walk. Not someday. Not when it's easy. Not when the world says yes. Walk now. Because now, you remember.